Hey everyone, today we're diving into the fascinating story of the Kushan Empire. Imagine a powerful empire that once spread across parts of what we now call Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, eastern Iran, and northern India. This was the Kushan Empire, formed around the early 1st century AD by a group known as the Yuezhi, who migrated from the northwest of China. Now, the Kushans were likely one of 5 branches of the Yuezhi Confederation, an Indo-European nomadic people. These folks traveled far from their original homeland in China, settling in ancient Bactria, an area that includes parts of modern Afghanistan and Uzbekistan. Their empire grew, blending various cultures and religions along the way. The first leader of the Kushan dynasty, Kushano-Sasanian, adopted Greek cultural ideas, following in the footsteps of the Greco-Bactrian tradition. He was also a follower of Hinduism, specifically the Shaivite sect. Later rulers like Vima-Kadphises and Vasudeva II continued to support Hinduism, but the Kushans were also big patrons of Buddhism. In fact, starting with Emperor Kanishka, they even included elements of Zoroastrianism in their beliefs. Kanishka, in particular, is remembered for his role in spreading Buddhism to Central Asia and China, helping to usher in a period of peace known as the Pax Kushana. Initially, the Kushans used Greek for their administration, but soon they switched to the Bactrian language. Under Kanishka, their empire extended north of the Karakoram Mountains, maintaining control over a vital road connecting Gandhara to China. This route played a crucial role in the spread of Mahayana Buddhism to China. The Kushan Empire wasn't just about military conquests, it was also a key player in trade and diplomacy. They had connections with the Roman Empire, Sasanian Persia, the Aksumite Empire, and the Han Dynasty of China. For a time, the Kushans were at the center of trade between the Roman Empire and China, making their empire a melting pot of philosophy, art, and science. But, like all empires, the Kushan Empire eventually began to fragment in the 3rd century AD. It broke into smaller, semi-independent kingdoms, which were eventually overrun by the Sasanians from the west and other invaders from the north. And in the early days, around the 2nd to 1st century BC, the Kushans were settling in regions like Bactria and Sogdiana, where they displaced the Sakas, who had to move further south. The Kushans were not just wandering tribes, they were building impressive structures, such as the monumental temple at Surk-Kotal and fortresses on the ruins of old Hellenistic cities like Iconium. The sculptures and friezes from this time often show horse-riding archers and scenes depicting battles against the Sakas. These sculptures even hint at a unique cultural practice among the Kushans, like artificially deforming skulls, a common trait among nomadic groups in Central Asia. The Kushans, also referred to as the Yuezhi in Chinese records, started consolidating their power around this time. The Chinese chronicles tell us that the Yuezhi divided Bactria in 128 BC and slowly began forming what we know as the Kushan Empire. The first ruler to declare himself a Kushan king was Heraios, who interestingly called himself a tyrant on his coins. He shared a lot in common with the Greeks, even using similar coin styles, suggesting some level of alliance or at least cultural exchange with them. Heraios might have been the father of Kushano-Kadphises, who is often credited with truly establishing the Kushan Empire by uniting the Yuezhi tribes under his rule. By the time Kushano-Kadphises took over, he wasn't just content with holding on to the power he inherited. He expanded the empire's reach significantly, taking over regions like Kabul and defeating other local kingdoms. His reign marked the start of a period where the Kushans became very wealthy and influential. The name Kushan itself comes from Gaizhuang, the name used in Chinese records, which was adapted in the West to describe this powerful confederation. As the Kushans expanded southward, they moved into Gandhara, which is now part of modern Pakistan, setting up important capitals in Bigram and Charsada. They didn't just conquer, they also absorbed many local cultures and traditions. For example, they adopted the Greek alphabet, modified it for their own use, and started minting coins that featured a mix of Greek and local languages. The influence of the Greeks didn't stop there. It seems there was even cooperation between the remaining Greek communities and the Kushans. One temple at Surkotl was built under the direction of a Greek architect named Palamedes. Over time, the Kushans embraced a variety of religions and beliefs. They were initially influenced by Zoroastrianism and Greek cults, but as they expanded into India, they began to adopt Buddhist practices. Emperor Bhima Kadphises, the father of the famous Kanishka, was a follower of Shaivism, a sect of Hinduism, but the Kushan rulers after him supported a mix of Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and Hindu Shaivism. At its peak, the Kushan Empire connected the seagoing trade of the Indian Ocean with the Silk Road's overland routes, facilitating a massive exchange of goods and culture. This strategic position helped the Kushans thrive, linking the distant markets of Rome and China, and fostering the growth of cities and trade across a vast expanse. And let's dive deeper into the Kushan Empire and its territorial expansion. As the Kushans solidified their power, their empire stretched across a vast region, with archaeological evidence of their rule found from Surkotl in Afghanistan to Bagram, the summer capital, and down to Peshawar, which became the capital during the reign of Kanishka I. The Kushans also established a winter capital in Mathura, India. This expansive territory wasn't just a result of their military conquests. They introduced a sophisticated form of governance, with regions overseen by kshatrapis or satraps, and makshatrapis, meaning great satraps. The Kushans' reach extended to various regions, including Crame, with its capital at Tuprakala, and even to areas in central India like Kausambi, Sanchi, and Sarnath, where inscriptions from the period bear the names and dates of Kushan kings. Their influence even touched regions as far south as Malwa, Maharashtra, and Odisha. While some 20th century Indian nationalists speculated that Kushan invasions in the 1st century AD led to Indian migrations into Southeast Asia, this theory lacks concrete evidence. One of the most telling pieces of evidence about the extent of the Kushan Empire is the Rabadak inscription, discovered in 1993. This inscription confirms earlier Chinese accounts and inscriptions from the Kanishka era, indicating that the Kushan dominion expanded significantly into northern India in the early 2nd century AD. The inscription lists several cities under Kanishka's rule, including Ujjain, Kundina, Saketa, Kausambi, Pataliputra, and possibly Champa. There's even mention of Kanishka's conquest of Pataliputra in Buddhist texts, further solidifying the Kushans' presence in northern India. Evidence of the Kushans' influence is found as far south as Pani, near the Narmada River, where a 2nd century stone inscription by a great satrap named Rupiama was discovered. This suggests that Kushan control may have extended that far, although it's also possible that the region was under the control of the western satraps. In the east, decorated coins from the reign of Huvishka, a later Kushan ruler, were found at Bodh indicating continued Kushan influence in the area. The presence of Kushan coins in Bengal and Odisha, as well as imitations of these coins, shows how far their commercial and cultural reach extended. To the west, the Kushan Empire covered regions that are today part of Balochistan, western Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Central Asia, including Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. The city of Merv in Turkmenistan was particularly notable for its Kushan Buddhist heritage. Northward, during the 1st century AD, the Kushans under Kujula Kadphises sent an army to the Tarim Basin to support the city-state of Kucha against a Chinese invasion, but they had to retreat after some skirmishes. Later, under Kanishka's rule in the 2nd century AD, the Kushans made further attempts to expand into the Tarim Basin, where they established contact with the Chinese. Kanishka managed to hold areas in the Tarim Basin that were likely once under the control of the Yuezhi, the ancestors of the Kushans. There's evidence of Kushan influence on the coinage in cities like Kashgar, Yarkand, and Khotan. Interestingly, according to Chinese chronicles, the Kushans once requested a Han princess as a bride, but their request was denied despite the gifts they sent to the Chinese court. Feeling slighted, the Kushans marched on Ban Zhao, a Chinese general, in AD 90 with a formidable force of 70,000 soldiers. However, the smaller Chinese force managed to defeat them, forcing the Kushans to retreat and eventually pay tribute to the Chinese Empire. The Tarim Basin regions were eventually conquered by Ban Zhao. Later, during the Yuanchu period, the Kushans sent a military force to install Chenpan, a former hostage among them, as the king of Kashgar, showing their continued interest in the region.